Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Khalid. But today is the 9th of May 2024 and these are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, to today's importance with respect to what happened exactly a year back on this very day in 2023. The riots that happened this very day were a series of violent clashes that happened, of course, following the arrest of leader of a political party, and then these demonstrations by the supporters of that political party descended into riots. There was extensive damage done to government and military facilities as a result of these protests that turned into riots, managed to destroy or damage around 40 public buildings, military installations, including the Lahore Corps Commander's House, Askari Tower in Lahore, General Headquarters in Rawalpindi, ISI office in Faisalabad, FC Fort in Chakdara, Radio Pakistan building in Peshawar, Toll Plaza in Sawat motorway and the Mianwali Air Base. 62 outbreaks of violence were documented, inflicting a loss of 2.5 billion rupees on the country. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has said the 9th May separates two thoughts of politics. One, those who sacrifice politics for the state, another, who attack the state for the sake of politics. These and more will be discussed during the course of the first segment. Why did Pakistan come to the point of 9th of May 2023? What led to it and what needs to be done now? Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the day 216 of the Palestine war, the conflict, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing, the war against humanity between the two countries that has been going on since the last 216 days. Tens of thousands of Palestinians are fleeing Rafah as the Israelis slowly and steadily capturing the area, and they are going back to Gaza. Gaza that has already been destroyed by the Israeli forces. As we speak, at least 34,904 people have been killed and 78,514 have been wounded in these attacks since the 7th of October. As far as the talks are concerned, the Palestinian side has returned back from those talks. It looks as if these talks have not been conclusive at all because, of course, of the capturing of the Rafah crossing, and because of the capturing of this Rafah crossing also, there is an issue as far as the aid supplied to the people in Palestine is concerned. So the results are twofold. Political failure of talks as well as an issue as far as the aid to the people is concerned. This and more will also be discussed in our second segment. Then we are going to talk about Pakistan's lunar satellite that has entered its orbit. Pakistan's inaugural lunar satellite IQ-Q has achieved a significant milestone. It has entered the moon's orbit on Wednesday afternoon. This has been confirmed by the Institute of Space Technology. It was deployed in the lunar orbit on the 8th of May. Last Friday, Pakistan became the 6th country to launch its first ever moon satellite. So congratulations in that order. Lastly, today is the United Nations International, in fact 2024 is the United Nations International Year of Camelids. Now, the decision has been taken to highlight the significant importance of camelids in the lives of people across the world. The camelids, of course, you might not know them, but a lot of people in South Africa know them, South America rather. Camelids include alpacas, the Bactrian camels, the guanacos, the llamas, and so on and so forth. Camelids play an important role in meeting the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. As it had been told, they are a source of milk and meat which helps people fight hunger. They also provide fiber which can be used for clothing and shelter. This is our lineup for today. Let's begin without further ado with our first story that concerns the first year. I don't know whether I should say anniversary or a year since the riots on the 9th of May 2023 broke. We've been joined by Akbar S. Babar. He's a founding member of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. He's right here with us in the studios. Thank you very much, Akbar S. Babar, to have joined us. Pleasure to have you in the studios. I'll begin with a quote by our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. He says that these violent riots of the 9th of May last year were aimed at ending democracy in Pakistan and establishing an individual's dictatorship, as well as bury the constitution and a nefarious goal of establishing kingship. This was said while he was addressing the federal cabinet today. He also said 1 year ago today, not only the symbols of our national pride and honor were attacked, but the sanctity of our sacred homeland was also assaulted. Do people a year down the lane understand or know or comprehend the reality of the situation?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I think it will take time. but it demands a counter narrative, narrative that is based on truth and introspection. And I think first we all have to understand that a political party that we founded was meant to bring the rule of law in Pakistan. It was meant to democratize society. It was meant to become a role model for other political parties. It was meant to be transparent and accountable. It was, I being one of the founding members who drafted the original constitution of PTI, and there were a few others also, there was a clause that the party chairman would only last for 2 terms, 3 years, and then fade away. What was the idea behind it? The idea was to put together a political party that is not individual or family based. They're not individual control of family fiefdoms. And that would democratize. And once that party gains popular traction and becomes a popular political party, once we practice that, it will become a political reality that the others will have to emulate. Now that was basically in a nutshell how we went about building this party. Party came of age October 30 in 2011. If you remember, there was a huge jalsa in Lahore. That was the party's coming of age. But then a lot happened between then and the 9th of May. Now that transformation of a party that was for nation building became a party that was espousing policies and following policies that were destructive. And here it comes that we have to understand what happened. What happened between October 2011 and May 9, 2023. And I was the first one, being somebody who was, according to the founding chairman's own written statement that his lawyer read out in the court of law, I was the number 2 in the party. Now when I sense that here is a betrayal in the making, and I have to stand up, because we didn't want power, we wanted change. We wanted to change the ground realities of politics in Pakistan. That could only happen if we become the role models. So then the power grab had started, and the power grab in the process, and I must say that it's not alone the political party and its leadership. There were institutions that literally pandered. They pandered them. And the more they pandered, the more they got away with it. So there comes a time where it becomes like a Frankenstein's monster you create in the laboratory and comes out and starts eating up the society. So you have to understand that no society can grow, no society can prosper if the writ of the state is compromised. Now my question has always been that in Pakistan since 2014, when this politics of dharnas and protests and violence, because see I'm leading up to May 9th, started, this is something for everyone to ponder, including our judiciary, including our ruling elite, including those in power. And a point came where they had to vacate power because of circumstances. Circumstances change in the parliament otherwise. But they could not fathom and understand the reality that in politics and democracies, power comes and power goes, but you have to remain focused. Nation must come first. So this is where, in order to build pressure on the institutions, in order to use this as a leverage, they went and became violent. And this was one way of blackmailing our system, that unless you succumb to what we demand, and what we demand is, this is like, this has happened in history. Fascists are always nationalist. They portray to be nationalist. They attract the youth. They have very venomous slogans, and they attract the youth. Allowed to indoctrinate society, they become a real lethal threat. And Hitler was a prime example. He got elected, but became a fascist who destroyed half the world. Mussolini, General Franco, and so many others. They attracted the masses. They become popular also. But it was a destructive, it was a power grab.
That was a power grab. We have to, we will of course continue our discussion with you, Akbar S. Babar. We have to go to a short break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and we continue our conversation on the 1 year of 9th of May 2023, that is of course today, and we have with us in the studios the founder member of PTI, Akbar S. Babar. Akbar S. Babar, I would also like to understand a statement that our Prime Minister has made today. He calls about an organized plot to create rift amongst the Pakistani people and leading the country towards anarchy and chaos. He says a malicious campaign is still going on through social media to malign Pakistan, its institutions, the armed forces of Pakistan and its leadership. How, in your point of view, can such vicious attempts be thwarted? Is it through political understanding? Is it through some other measures? Looking at the way all of this has been cultivated, like you yourself were alluding towards, what needs to be done?
Well, you see, you have to understand that, again, I was the first person standing outside the Election Commission of Pakistan. And when this whole thing started after the removal of the government in March, April 2022, I was warning that the whole narrative is pitching the people against the institutions. And this is very dangerous. This will create those rifts and divide society. And also, it is very destructive. You know, I was the first repeatedly who said, this is not on, this must be stopped. So there was no counter narrative. There was no counter media campaign. And that has to be done through a number of ways. That was missing, number one. But then when this narrative started building up, then why were they doing it? Why May 9th? What happened in May 9th when they attacked military institutions, government installations, and symbols of our pride? You have to understand, this is very important. Any society's soul is its pride. Take away that pride, you have a body with no soul. And that body is as good as dead. Now, we have made mistakes. Our institutions have made mistakes over the years. There's a long history of it. We can talk about it. But let's see other nations who've made worse mistakes. For example, in the US, their civilian and military establishment went to the Vietnam War. They lost 58,000 troops. They lost hundreds and thousands of troops. They killed millions of Vietnamese. Today, instead of the B-52s, they're showering them with dollars, investing in dollars, because their leadership stood on principles. Ho Chi Minh and General Giap, they said, no, we will not accept this. We will defend our sovereignty, so and so forth, others. But when you go to the US, their media, their political parties, they don't malign their own institutions. They talk about how not to do it again, how to avoid similar mistakes. So when you go after institutions and malign them, you're undermining the national pride. Because remember, heroes of any country who sacrifice their lives are the pride of the nation.
True.
You attack them, you attack the soul of the nation. You take away the soul. Now, this is what is happening. This is what needs to be understood. That irrespective of what has happened in Pakistan, I mean, I've been a victim of certain policies. For 8 years, when I was fighting the foreign funding case, I was on the other side of the spectrum. I stood my ground, but I never maligned the institutions. I never picked up cudgels publicly, because these are our institutions. You have to improve them, you have to build them, you have to correct the course, and you have to create an environment. This is where, when I contested the intra-party election issue in the Supreme Court, and the issue was not the election symbol. The issue was to democratize political parties, starting with my own party. And once we make it an example where leadership can come from the workers, must be given that fundamental right. Now, once a party is democratic, the fascist control, the autocratic control, the dictatorial control of leaders vanishes. And this is what they don't want. And this is what we need to do in our system. If we do that, and if we focus on that, your issues are resolved, because you will create a leadership that is credible, that is competent. There's no lack of competence in Pakistan. But how do you bring competent and credible leadership in the leadership role in Pakistan? There's no way. The doors are locked, because political parties are either individual or family fiefdoms. And this is a negation of everything we stood for by building PTI. If PTI was meant to emulate what has happened in this country in political terms, there was no need for PTI. In fact, we've outpaced them in terms of what has happened.
But Babar, you know, I understand where you're coming from, the politics of it all, but we see, of course, the party that you adhere to has crossed all norms or all limits. Let's not go what those limits are. But I'd like to refer to what our President Asif Ali Zardari says, and he says in a statement today that today's day, the May 9th, will always be remembered as a dark day in Pakistan's history when a politically instigated mob ran amok. He also calls it an attempt to challenge the writ of the state, and I think you agree with me on that, undermining the rule of law and weakening the institutions. He affirms that any attempt to misuse these rights to incite violence would not be tolerated. Of course, he says such vandalism has not been seen in responsible democracies. What should be the modus operandi, let's put it that way, from now onwards for the respective political party that you adhere to, that we have seen has been behind it, and we see the comments, we see the public also that is reacting in a certain manner, but we also see their followers that still fail or do not want to understand the reality of the situation. How can we rectify the whole situation?
You see, there are two ways of doing it, and they must go in parallel. One is zero tolerance for what happened. There should never be any compromise on it. The moment you compromise on the writ of the state, you've opened the doors for another May 9th and even worse. So that is, and for that, whatever needs to be done, and your judiciary should play a role. If laws have to be changed, if constitutional amendments have to be made, if evidence laws have to be changed, because I hear things which are, I've gone through the judicial process for 9 years. I've seen it all. I've seen our legal fraternity. I've seen the judiciary. I've seen how things work or don't work or are not allowed to work. We need to change all that. And that can be done by changing the laws, by amending the constitution. So there is zero tolerance, and then the judiciary, they have to play a very positive role to enforce the writ of the state, which is essential. You see, that's the only way forward for Pakistan. There is no way that this society can tolerate. Now, the other aspect of it, this is where the politics comes, is performance. You have to perform, you have to deliver. You have to change society, you have to change the ground realities. You have to show by bringing in more competence in the system, more competent leadership that can perform, that can improve the education, the health, the poverty, the law and order, the police reforms. Now that's the whole performance package that needs to be pursued. Now without that, if people don't end up feeling the change, a positive change, all these other things that we talked about remain hollow slogans. So you have to, you see, what happens in the West, for example, Pakistanis living abroad, they have a certain sense, and some of them obviously support a certain narrative. Why? Because the narrative on paper, the rhetoric is of democracy, of Western democracy and their ideals, that we will follow that. Now, the reality is quite different. But unfortunately, they are the ones living abroad who actually see the fruits of democracy. They personally feel it when it comes to education, health, security, merit, and other transparency and other issues. They sense it and they see it. Now that is why they adhere to certain ideals. The tragedy in Pakistan is that this is all political rhetoric. This is all to attract.
All right, Akbar Sahab, last question. We're a bit short of time. I've just been told we have to end this segment. The 9th May violence also highlights the misuse of social media, something that we are seeing to date. Dangers of hate speech polarize a society, polarize a nation, bring to perspective different narratives that could or could not be true. They incite people against others, against our national heroes, as we've seen on the 9th of May. How can we, in your point of view, overcome such propaganda to polarize and destabilize Pakistan?
Well, first of all,
on social media.
Yes, you have to have a counter strategy and a counter narrative, and you have to combat this menace that is going on in social media. I have been a victim of it.
I know.
And so who else would know better how I've been made victim, and the character assassination that goes with it. But I'm of the type that I don't care. I don't believe in others' ideals. I believe in my ideals, and I adhere to them. And time is the ultimate test. But having said that, you need to have laws. You need to have effective laws that can be implemented, and you have to bring it in. There are countries. There are countries all over the world who've taken to task such nuisance that goes on. Our social media is totally out of control. Imagine a society where lies are sold, and you gain monetary benefit by lying and lying and lying.
Akbar S. Babar, we could continue for another hour or so on this, but we unfortunately have to come to an end of this segment. It was a pleasure to have you in the studios and to discuss from your perspective as to what happened on the 9th of May last year. And I hope the message goes across, because I think in this time and age, we need stability more than ever in a country like Pakistan, whether it be on the economic front, whether it be on the political side. And for that, all parties, all stakeholders, A, need to come on one page, B, all the perpetrators who have been behind destabilized Pakistan need to be brought to task so that such examples, such as persons are taken as examples so that others do not follow suit. Thank you so very much, Akbar S. Babar, and to have come all the way to the studios. Let's come to our next story, and that concerns day 216 of the Israel-Palestine conflict. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have attempted to flee Rafah as Israel has shelled eastern areas of the city, sheltering some 1.5 million people. Israel's continued closure of the Rafah border crossing is choking off the entirety of life-saving aid into Gaza, says the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. US President Joe Biden says he will not supply offensive weapons that Israel could use to launch an all-out assault on Rafah in the toughest public comments yet about the widely condemned military operation. He says civilians have been killed in Gaza as a consequence of these bombs and other ways in which they go after population centers. At least 34,904 people have been killed so far. 78,514 have been wounded in Israeli attacks on Gaza since the 7th of October last year. Israel continues to bomb Rafah and the rest of the Gaza Strip as Palestinians remain trapped following the seizure of this vital Rafah crossing. Also, talks that had been going on between the Palestinian and Israeli side seem to come on some kind of stalemate, because the Palestinian side is back in Qatar, and it seems as if the seizure of the Rafah crossing has caused a major dent as far as these talks are concerned. A lot of different countries across the world, a lot of different organizations are also pressurizing Israel not to move forward with this ground offensive on Rafah. But by the different comments or statements that are being made by the Israeli side, it seems as if Israel is going to eventually go through with it. But what will be the outcome of it? That and more is going to be discussed in this segment, and we have with us as guest Dr. Tughral Yamin. He's a senior analyst. He's right here with us in the studios. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saab, Palestinian civil defense teams exhumed 49 bodies from another mass grave recently uncovered at the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza. We all remember the episode in the past of the Al-Shifa hospital as well. This is the 7th mass grave that has been discovered during the war, according to the health services. Then, to add to that, we've got the 34,904 people who've been killed and more than 78,000 who have been wounded as well, which makes up to more than 100,000. Then, to add to this, there's so many thousands of Palestinians who are incarcerated in jails. The majority of those who've been killed are also women and children, which of course leads to the assertion that this is in fact a war crime, a crime against humanity. In your point of view, Dr. Saab, when will Israel stop? What should we expect in the coming days, and who will take the blame for these casualties once there is some kind of a lull?
Israelis will not stop. They have one point agenda. They want to eliminate Hamas totally, disarm them, kill them all. They want the only stumbling block in their scheme of things is the 200 odd hostages that Hamas has taken. But Hamas's point of view is that they should be exchanged for thousands of Palestinians incarcerated in Israeli jails, which include women and children.
Around 10,000.
And children, small children. So, as you mentioned in the opening remarks, it's a stalemate. The Israelis are not willing to budge from their position, and Hamas have no other option. If they say, okay, we are willing to disarm or go our own way, the way it happened with Arafat If you recall, he and his cohorts of Al Fatah were bundled off in a ship from Lebanon to Morocco or Tunis, I don't remember where, and that was the end of PLO, frankly saying. So this is again what the Israelis want. They want Hamas to be totally finished. They don't want any element of Hamas to be active in this rubble.
To what end, Umar? This is what I fail to understand, you want to end a certain faction, but for that you kill tens of thousands of people and injure around 80,000 others, and then destroy a whole city or more cities, and there is no regard whatsoever just for that? I mean, doesn't that remind of the world wars? Isn't this a mini world war in the making?
It's a genocide. There is no doubt about it. And the Israelis have put themselves in a cul-de-sac. They think that if they stop now, they will probably be declared as war criminals, as you are saying, and as the world is saying. Netanyahu and his bunch of Zionist zealots, they might be tried for war crimes, and this would perhaps, in my mind, signal the end of the Israeli state in its present shape. So I don't think they're going to end, which is a shame, which is a pity. But the Hamas are holding out. They're a ragtag group of militiamen with some odd sidearms, rifles, pistols, maybe some odd rockets, which they've stopped firing. So whatever the United States of America is doing, because unfortunately the United States of America is the one who is supporting them wholeheartedly. It is a tenet of their foreign policy that Israel's security is supreme with them. No American politician worth his name ever in the past 70 years had the courage to call Israel to account.
But Dr. Tughral, I mean, look at the protests that are going on in all the universities. The biggest universities in the US are the center of these protests that are asking for the administration to call this a genocide. And this is not just in the US. I'm calling the United Kingdom. We are all important countries in the European Union. We've got Australia. We've got other countries as well, where such protests are gaining momentum. Will that have any impact on the US? You said that in the last 70 years, no leader has, stood up to the Israeli atrocities. Will these protests lead to someone, whether it be Joe Biden or his successor, facing the Israelis on the crimes against humanity?
Both these two very old gentlemen, who should be actually consigned to the geriatric ward, will not oppose Israel at all. Whatever is happening now is Trump's doing, because he was the author of the Abraham Accords, and it was his son-in-law Jared Kushner who pushed it, and he was trying to normalize situation between the Arabs and the Israelis. But no, they are not going to do it. The only point is, will there be a Vietnam moment in all this? Remember Kent State University, where firing took place under the watch of Lyndon B. Johnson, and the student was killed who was just a bystander. He was not even participating in the anti-war protests, because in Vietnam a lot of young men were drafted in and sent to Vietnam to fight a useless war which had no implications of the security of the United States of America. The only thing was that the Americans wanted to stem what they considered a possible domino effect if they did not stop the Viet Cong or North Vietnamese then from taking over Vietnam, which they eventually did. And the Americans had to leave Vietnam, like the way they had to leave Afghanistan. So if there is going to be a Vietnam moment, I do not know whether that will happen or not. And then Johnson sued for peace. He sent Henry Kissinger for peace talks in Paris, and there were conclusive talks, but at the end of the day, the Americans just pulled out. They had the 50,000 or 60,000 of the young men killed in the killing fields of Vietnam.
But Dr. Tughral, herein it's not the US that is involved, but a major ally of the US. But the US is supplying arms to them, and huge arms. President Joe Biden does say now that he's not going to supply offensive weapons that Israel could use to launch all-out assault on Rafah. But will this have any impact if he stops?
No impact. You see, he has just said that I am not going to supply you with 35,000 heavy bombs. In my opinion, these heavy bombs are those which have deep penetration effects, and they can destroy the tunnels which the Hamas had dug under the surface of Gaza Strip. So they've already done that. So these 35,000 odd heavy duty bombs, which they have been using mercilessly, it won't have any effect. He says that I will not supply you with artillery ammunition, but he has not said that I am not going to supply you with small arms ammunition or I am not going to supply you with a tank ammunition. It is the tanks which are going in and killing innocent people. So I don't think this is too little, too late, and unless you see, Johnson did not have to fight an election, contest an election. He came into power because Kennedy was assassinated, and he became a president by default. And then he decided not to participate in the elections because he knew that his stock had already fallen very low. So he took a wise decision, opted out of elections, and then whatever happened in American history, that is another point. But Kent State was the final straw that broke the proverbial camel's back. Is that going to happen? I don't know. If there is a killing inside the American campuses, the American police has been very, very brutal. We have seen video clips where they've been manhandling women professors, pushing them to ground and manhandling them and handcuffing them and all sorts of things, breaking their glasses. But if somebody dies on the campus, then it will affect the parents because they have sent their children to the universities to study and not to get killed.
But Dr. Tughral, you talk of the parents, hasn't the US public also been affected economically by all the aid, all the money, the billions and billions of dollars that are being sent or have been sent, continue to be sent to Israel? Instead of helping their own people, they are helping an ally that is creating havoc in the Middle East.
There is a big theory behind it. Whenever conflict takes place, it is the military-industrial complex which reaps the dividends. The $95 billion that the American government has promised to, among others, Ukraine, Taiwan and Israel, it is going to be plowed back into the military-industrial complex. So the Americans are not going to lose anything. Their factories will keep running. They will keep on producing aircraft, air defense equipment, tanks and everything. They are not losing anything. There is the way the Soviet Union collapsed economically after their feckless adventure in Afghanistan is, I don't think that is going to happen in the United States of America. The only thing is that they are earning a very bad name, but since they are between two oceans, they think they are safe from the abuse of the world, the curses of the world. Otherwise, I don't think it is going to affect the American economy at all. Those $95 billion that they have promised to their allies in Ukraine and Taiwan and Israel, ultimately they are going to go to their military-industrial complex.
All right.
So I don't think they are going to suffer.
Dr. Tughral, as far as the Rafah ground invasion is concerned, do you see that happening with the same furor that the Israelis have been promising their war cabinet and their extreme rightist mindset people? Or do you feel there's going to be a little diluted form of that invasion that will happen whenever it happens?
Omar Sahab, there is no kindness in war.
True.
You kill people, whether you kill one or you kill two. When you kill a single person, the entire family is affected, the children, the parents, the siblings. So I don't think there is anything like a dilute war. If they go inside, if they launch a assault inside Rafah, where a million odd people are packed like sardines and they are cowering from fear, it will have long-lasting effects. And I think already the entire population of Gaza has been traumatized. I don't think they will ever lead normal lives again. I have seen people from conflict zones who actually, when they hear helicopters flying, they instinctively cover. They are fearful that this helicopter gunship would fire deadly missiles.
The effects are going to be for generations to come.
Absolutely. So it is going to be a trauma which is going to be etched in the collective minds of Gazans and the people in the West Bank also, because they are attacking West Bank also.
Yes, so, and they are incarcerating thousands and thousands of people in the West Bank as we speak, and taking hold of properties and then demolishing them and constructing settlements for the Israelis.
Illegal settlements. You're absolutely right. So I don't think so America has any legal, any real pressure on them. Students, yes, but which student is going to become the president of the United States? No, it's only these.
But these students are going to be the future voters.
In 20 years' time. They are
voters, not in 20 years' time, but in a couple.
I'm talking about the president of the United States of America. doesn't really matter. There is an electoral college, there is bipartisan government inside United States of America. It's either the Democrats or the Republicans, either one.
There's no third option.
There's no third option. So the Kennedy is one of the independent runners, but he is also pro-Israel. So you don't find any person really, and in Europe, unfortunately, in some countries of Europe like Germany, they have been drilled. It has been drilled into their minds that anything if they say against Israel it will be construed as anti-Semitism. So they have been, because of what happened in the Second World War. So
but you know, the difference between anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism is very blurred now. You know, there's no distinction whatsoever. And you say something, they always construe it as being anti-Semitism.
So the post-war generation, which is now in the 70s or 80s, and also people in the 60s or 50s, they believe that nothing should be said against Israel because what happened in their history, whatever Hitler did to the Jews. So they are so worried about saying anything against the Jews. Although the young population, very young population, which is in no way associated with what happened in the Second World War, has started speaking up.
But you know, there's a difference between the Zionists and the Jews as well. There is a community amongst the Jewish people who wants peace, who wants the Palestinians to thrive, and who are for a two-state solution, and who do not want what Israel is currently doing, in fact. So we also need to make that demarcation between the Zionists and the Jewish population.
Totally agree. The Jews also have a right to live. And if they have decided to live in this place, so be it. But that does not mean that the Palestinians don't have a right to statehood or a right to
their land.
Security.
At
the end of the day, it is their land. So security of the Palestinians and security of Jews and security of all those people who are held up in jails is paramount. This is humanity. It is beyond race or creed or ethnicity. So the world at large would not forget it. Whatever is happening now, this is a dark chapter in the history of mankind.
Whenever this war ends, I don't know when it will end, what will be the consequence, if at all. I dread the worst. I expect something to happen, but I dread the worst. What happens when it ends? What about the reconstruction? The United Nations talks about $40 billion just for the reconstruction of the area. Forget the rest, you know, forget the health supplies, water, food, and the rest. Just the reconstruction is $40 billion, or now it will be even plus if the ground invasion in Rafah happens. Will the world come to the aid of the Palestinians?
You see, unfortunately, UNRWA, the largest sponsor is the United States of America. Despite all its ills, they are the major donor agency for the UN Refugee Agency inside Palestine. So I think OIC, with all these rich petrodollar-rich countries, should be coming to the aid of the Palestinians in rebuilding and reconstruction of at least Gaza.
Well, China has said that it is ready to reconstruct whenever.
And I'm sure, Omar Saab, if fundraising is done in Pakistan, Pakistani nation will raise enough funds.
We are philanthropic.
We are very philanthropic. They will be able to construct a hospital, at least one hospital, schools, other places, maybe a university. So I think Pakistan should, now our policy planners should be thinking on those lines. We do not recognize Israel. Palestine, unfortunately, is under Israeli control. But if we, within the umbrella of OIC, do something and have a Pakistan hospital, a Jinnah hospital, or a Nepal hospital within Gaza, because Indonesia had a hospital.
Okay.
And you recall the Dr. Ansari's medical mission to the Balkan Wars in the early 20th century. It earned us lasting friendship with the Turks, because we were the slaves of the English, but still we sent a medical mission on a ship.
True. That is true. Dr. Tughral, last question, we're a bit short of time. What are the diplomatic repercussions? We have a lot of countries that are, accepting Palestine. We have had Spain, Ireland, and several other countries which, according to a report in the Irish news, are going to finally accept Palestine as a state. Then we have countries like Ankara, like Colombia, who have severe ties with Israel. Is this going to have some kind of a diplomatic, political, or other repercussion on Israel, or economic?
It will have some implications. If the Turks have cut off trade ties with them, it will have some implications for them. But there should be more meaningful sanctions. South Africa or
but look Rhodesia. What happened after ICJ. What happened?
Nothing will happen, because ICC and ICJ do not have any jurisdictions. Even if they order arrest warrants of President Putin, nobody is going to arrest him. If they issue arrest warrants against Netanyahu, he'll stay in Israel or go visit.
Look at the United Nations Security Council resolution that was passed.
Yeah, so many no weapons to Israel, but still that is happening. So, but Pakistan should take some meaningful steps to show that really they have.
Well, Pakistan, at least at the United Nations front, Munir Akram Saab has been very vocal as far as,
Pakistan is
highlighting that is concerned.
The government of Pakistan also has been taking a
that
very
is
strong
true.
stance.
Let's hope, Dr. Saab, something comes. I mean, I'm very skeptical, cautiously optimistic, but I'm also very, I don't know what's going to happen, apprehensive of what could happen in Rafah in the coming days. Let's hope for the best. Let's hope for the best. Kindly stay with us for just 2 or 3 minutes till I end the show, sir.
Okay.
Let's come to our last 2 stories. Very, very quickly, the first concerns Pakistan's first moon satellite that has entered its orbit. The iCube-Q has achieved a significant milestone by entering the moon's orbit on Wednesday afternoon. This has been confirmed by the Institute of Space Technology. iCube-Q was deployed in the lunar orbit on the 8th of May. Now, according to the Institute of Space Technology, the pivotal development highlights its importance in potentially unlocking larger scale space missions for Pakistan in the future. Last Friday also, as we all know, we are highlighted in our show as well, Pakistan became the 6th country to launch its first ever moon satellite, riding on the Chinese rocket Chang'e 6's lunar probe. Now, this is also another aspect of the strong collaboration in space technology between Pakistan and the People's Republic of China. So hats off to Pakistan, and looking forward to more such endeavors on the front. Finally, the United Nations has declared 2024 as the International Year of the Camelids. Now, the decision has been taken to highlight the significant importance of camelids in the lives of people across the world. Camelids include Bactrian camels, dromedary camels, wild camels, South American camelids such as domesticated llamas and alpacas. We don't know much about them because we live in another part of the world, but these are very, of course, common and are used prominently in this part of the world. They play an important role in meeting the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. They are particularly important in desert and mountain regions where they form an integral part of the livelihoods and the traditional practices of indigenous communities. And of course, even in the most extreme climate conditions, they produce milk, meat, fiber and organic fertilizer and provide transport, boosting food security, nutrition and livelihoods while helping to conserve fragile ecosystems. So of course, the importance of camelids is why the year 2024 has been consecrated for them. This is the international year to recognize their global impact. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.